last night I wrote down some things that, some key factors of good negotiation as I thought back over my career. And I'm not going to give you anything you don't already know in terms of key factors, but what I want to do is I want to give you the key factors, and then I want to walk you through my career, and I want to talk to you about 3 or 4 key negotiations that took place in my career that really shaped it for me, shaped it for my career, and shaped things for me financially. And hopefully it'll be of interest to you. First, as I wrote, now the first thing I wrote down when it comes to negotiation was get the facts. I love what Bill Gates said, you know, manage with the power of information. I'm a huge believer in that. I believe that whole theory of the Blink theory. Have you guys all read the book Blink? If you haven't, write that down. That's a great business book you should read at some point. But I think the Blink factor really doesn't work unless you have information in your background. So get the facts before you go into any kind of negotiation. The second thing is have a plan. You know, begin with the end in mind. We've always heard that. And the third was establish power or leverage. Now, a lot of times that's seen in a negative way. I'd argue that it doesn't need to be. Leverage and power isn't negative. It's a positive used properly. The fourth thing was to listen. The best business people I've been around, the best leaders I've been around, have always been great listeners. They're always able to rally the troops in time of need. They're always able to motivate. They're always able to negotiate the best if they're good listeners. And then the last thing, control emotions. And I'm going to share a story with you that made me literally millions of dollars. And I can promise you I wouldn't have made those dollars had I not controlled the emotions in that negotiation. The next is problem solve, be able to problem solve. And then finally, find the win. You know, I think there's all kinds of negotiations, and I'm not sure what you guys have been focusing on, but there's negotiations with employees for employee pay. There's negotiations with lawsuits. And I'm going to share a big lawsuit that I was involved in my career, and how negotiations had a very positive impact for me and could have been very destructive had we not negotiated it properly. You can get involved in negotiations with government, which I've been involved with partners, business partners, with vendors and with customers. And again, I'm not sure what you focused on, but in your business careers already, you've had ample opportunity to negotiate. And as you pursue your career, whether you're starting a new business or working for someone else, the best performers learn how to negotiate and interact in those kinds of circumstances. So let's go back to when my career started. It started in 1992. I started working for a company called Co-op Communications. And Co-op Communications was a long-distance rebiller for Sprint. And the two founders of that company had found themselves in a huge predicament. They had a huge receivable portfolio they were unable to collect on. So they thought that they would hire a collection agent. So they put an ad out that I responded to, and I was a young, newly married BYU student. And so I hopped in, I needed a job, and I thought, hey, collections, I think I could collect. And so I jumped into that business and started collecting, and had significant success. Not because I was a great salesman, not because even I knew how to negotiate at the time. I was 21 years old, and I really didn't know much. But because I was willing to work harder than anyone else, to put in the time and the energy to figure out the angles with these customers, figure out how to get them to pay us. And I did well enough that the company decided to launch a new marketing and sales campaign. The founders were going to run a direct mail campaign to try to increase their customer base, and they needed someone in the company to take inbound phone calls and make outbound phone calls to these direct mail recipients and sell them our services. And at the time, we were selling long distance phone service. We were selling, at the time, calling cards. I don't even know if you can get a calling card anymore. And we were also selling, believe it or not, 800 and 900 number services. Does anyone remember 900 numbers? Some of you do, and they had a bad rap because a lot of them were sexually motivated. We did not sell those kinds of 900 numbers, just so you know. But we put this campaign together, and I started fielding inbound calls and making outbound calls. And the founders were impressed because I was actually making sales. They wondered if we could make this campaign work. And so we started making sales, and things started going well. And so they started involving me in the marketing campaign. So I started managing all of the marketing, the direct mail campaign. I started writing some copy. I actually managed all of our list brokers and all of the mail. And they gave me the opportunity to go hire a few of my BYU buddies that were also going to school with me. At the time, I was still trying to finish my degree. And I ended up building this little sales floor to about 8 salespeople. And we were doing, for us at the time, it was a significant amount of sales. We were doing about $75,000 in sales a week out of these 8 guys. And I was nearing the end of my education, and I had an opportunity to go and work for a company called Whitby Pharmaceutical, which I'm confident none of you have ever heard of, but you will have heard of the drug that they repped, which is called Lortab. Most of us have heard of Lortab. And I was pretty excited about the opportunity. I mean, they were going to give me a company car. I was going to make $33,000 a year base salary with some bonus. I mean, I was pretty pumped about it. But as I thought about it, I really loved these 2 mentors of mine. They'd given me a shot as not just a collection agent, but upside opportunity as I performed. And I thought to myself, I wonder if I can negotiate a bigger opportunity. I had some leverage at the time. I was graduating from college. I had a job offer. And my other piece of leverage was I was a hell of a performer. I was making them a lot of money, and I had built a significant marketing and sales campaign. And so I had a plan. I put a plan together. And I figured, I was in my early 20s, and I figured, you know what, I'm going to shoot for the stars. I'm not just going to go in and try to negotiate a higher than $33,000 salary. I'm going to go in, and what do you think I went for? I went for ownership. I decided I'm going to go in and see if I can get a piece of this business. So I went in and I sat down with my 2 founders, and I laid out my plan for them. I showed them my performance over the last 3 or 4 years that I'd been working with them, and reminded them of what I had built, the revenue engine I had built, and I proposed to them that they give me ownership. And in fact, I figured I'd really go all the way. I wanted to be an equal partner with them. Now, my 2 mentors, they were in their early 60s. These were experienced businessmen. They'd been around the block a few times. Both of them had owned successful businesses in the past and had started this business just a few years before I started with them. And I remember the look on one of these 2 guys' faces when I proposed this equal partnership. It was kind of like, who the hell does this young whippersnapper think he is? But I had a plan. I wasn't going to suggest to them that I become an equal partner there and then on that day, but that I would earn it out. I'd earn it out based upon my performance. And I laid out a specific schedule and a specific plan. And in the matter of just a couple of hours, I've become their full and equal business partner. That was probably my first most significant negotiation that I had. And frankly, it shaped my whole professional career. And I used the strategies, not that I learned in an MBA program. Remember, I'd just gotten an English degree. But I used the negotiation skills that you guys have been learning to really shape the rest of my professional career. Well, that business, Co-op Communications, that was a long-distance rebiller, when the phone business got deregulated and rates became more and more competitive, margins shrunk significantly, and we struggled to make money. And so there was this new thing that was kind of coming on board, this sexy thing called the internet. And so we thought to ourselves, you know what, we ought to figure out how we can get into the internet business. And so we considered becoming an ISP, and we thought through what could we do. And so we decided that we were going to start our own little internet technology business. We were going to start programming websites for people, and we launched that business. That business became somewhat successful. We ran the business up to about $20 million in sales. And my mentors at the time were looking for an exit strategy. They wanted to retire. They wanted to find a way to get some value out of this business that they were building. And their partner, this young whippersnapper, I didn't have the money or the wherewithal to buy them out. And we really couldn't find a way. And so we decided that we were going to take this business public. And so we met with different bankers. And this was in the mid 90s. And if you guys, I guess, weren't really, how old were you guys in the mid 90s? 10. Yeah, 10. Okay. Well, you guys have heard of the dot-com boom. Have you heard of those days? Well, this was kind of during that dot-com boom. And this was during the days where it was cool to go public. And we made a critical business decision that was frankly an error. We decided to go with a banker who convinced us to do a reverse merger. And a reverse merger is when you go out and you find a failed public company that just has a shell of a business. Have you guys heard of this? This is how a lot of companies go public. They don't have the cash or the wherewithal. They don't have the story per se to go and sell to the street to raise significant enough money to go public in the traditional way. So we were going to go public through a reverse merger. Not only that, our banker was going to do what's called a foreign registration. Has anyone heard of a foreign registration? Okay, you're getting a hell of an education here today. Back in the early 90s, a banker could take his shares in the deal and he could register them offshore. The reason he'd register them offshore was for a strategy you've probably heard of. It's called a pump and dump. Now, we were naive. We were running this little internet technology company. We were grinding away trying to figure out a way to make a profit. And we didn't know anything about going public. And so we were taken advantage of. And over a period of time, we went public. And our banker took us out at $6. And we were pumped. I mean, overnight, I was a multi-millionaire. I was pumped. Now, what they don't tell you when you go public and you're an officer and founder of a company is you have no shot at selling your stock. And so what I watched happen was our stock went from $6 to $5 to $4 and all the way down to 50 cents. And the only person that made money taking us public was that banker that registered his shares in a foreign corp overseas and sold us all the way down. And so we were left in a significant predicament. We didn't raise any money in going public. Our stock was now down 50 cents. And when you're public, you have all kinds of additional expenses, auditing fees, legal fees, registration fees. It was a significant challenge. And so over the coming years, we battled and struggled. We couldn't drive increased revenues. Our earnings were basically nothing. We were literally stealing from Peter to pay Paul over the years, just trying to figure things out. It was a big mistake. So we decided that we had a solution to our problem, which is going to come into my second negotiation opportunity of my career. We decided we were going to merge our company with a company called NetGateway, a company out of California who had gone public. They were a NASDAQ company. We were a bulletin board stock because we never met the criteria needed to be a national exchange company. Didn't have the balance sheet, didn't have the earnings, didn't have the shareholders. So this company had great technology. Their stock was being traded at $14 on the NASDAQ exchange. We thought that this company had huge potential. They didn't have significant revenues, but with our revenues coming in and giving us some capital for our business, we thought we could really take it to the moon. So we entered into negotiations with this company and signed a merger deal. It took us about 12 months to finalize that merger deal because of due diligence and accounting and all those kinds of things that happen. And in the process, this company of about 250 employees, their stock went from $14 in 12 months down to $1. They burned through all of their cash that they had. We came to find out that their earnings their revenues they were reporting were fictitious. They were internal revenue deals. And we came to the end of the 1-year period, and the only way out of that deal for us is we had to come up with around $5 million cash to buy ourselves out of the deal. Well, we didn't have $5 million cash. And so the deal went through. And once they had a hold of our business, we had a significant financing portfolio. We financed our technology to our customer base, and they paid for it over a period of time. And it's the way we generated cash flow and earnings for our business, frankly. And they took a hold of that portfolio, and they decided that they would shop it and try to sell it off so that they could raise cash to pay for their 250 employees in California and their significant G&A. And so we were faced with a huge problem. We knew if they sold off that portfolio, we would never see that cash. We knew that we would shortly be out of business. So we decided that we were going to do what some of you might hear a hostile takeover. We were going to try to take over the business. We had one board seat, and between me and my partners, we only owned about 10% of the stock, which was not enough to do anything. So we had to find a way to negotiate our way into a new deal. So the first step that we did is we scoured the shareholder list. And we found a few key shareholders, and we reached out to those shareholders. And we invited them out to our business in Utah. At the time, we were headquartered in the old WordPerfect campus in Orem, Utah. And we invited them into the office. And I literally got up on a whiteboard, and I drew out our business model. And I showed them how we were going to make money if we could just get rid of the burden of this company we had merged with. And if we could just get $500,000 of capital into the business. So we convinced a couple of shareholders that we could do it. But with those shareholders, we still only had about 30% of the shares of this public company. So still a challenge. But we thought we had enough that maybe we could go and negotiate a way out of this deal. So we pulled the board together. We flew out to California, my business partner and I, and these two shareholders. And we sat down with the board, and over a period of one day, we convinced them all to resign, surrender their stock, and to give us the business. Well, how did we do that? Well, we had gotten the facts. We knew where the leverage was, where the problems were in the business, where the missteps and misdeeds that they had made were. And so we offered them an out. We offered them a way to exit the business without any significant legal liability for themselves. And we offered them up a modest severance and warrants in the company that could be exercised over time based upon the performance of our group. And so we were able to go ahead and go out and raise some money, get rid of their debt. They had burned through, in that year period, they burned through some $15 million in cash, and they had racked up $10 million in debt. We went out, raised about $5 million. We settled the debt for pennies on the dollar, and we put $500,000 into the business. We grew that business over the next 5 to 7 years to about $200 million in sales. We took the stock from 50 cents to $27. One of the highlights of my career was when I was able to go out to New York City and ring us in on the American Exchange. That was a very, very cool experience to yell down to all those traders, to see them cheer and clap as our company was introduced on the exchange. And it was an awesome, awesome experience for our business. Again, a negotiation opportunity that changed our business and changed our career. Now, we could easily have just given up, right? We could have just said, there's no way out of this. And that business would have failed for sure. The hundreds of people who had a job wouldn't have had a job. And that business today is still a going business. It's moved from Orem, Utah, and moved to Phoenix, Arizona. But let me tell you one other experience that I had with that business before I exited the business. Our stock went to 27. That was the good news. And so a lot of us executives, we were so excited. We'd worked many, many years to get the business where it was. And so we had an opportunity to sell some stock and to have a liquidation opportunity, put some money in our pockets for our hard work. And so we sold some stock over a period of the next 2 months and put some significant dollars in our pockets. And after the last stock sale, about 3 days later, I got this letter in the mail. And on the front of the envelope, it said, the Attorney General's Office of the State of Texas. And I opened it up, and there was a lawsuit against our company. And they were claiming all kinds of consumer fraud and things of that nature. And I couldn't believe it. I was beside myself. And so I got my attorneys on the phone, and they called the Attorney General's office, and come to find out that the Attorney General's office over the last 5 years had 3 consumer complaints about our software and our business and our selling practices. At the time, we were acquiring about 20,000 customers a year, and 3 complaints. I couldn't believe that they would be suing us. Well, because you're a public company, you have to announce publicly these kinds of lawsuits. And so we announced that lawsuit to the public, and our stock went from $27 down to $15. I got another letter in the mail about 2 weeks later, and it was notifying me of a class action lawsuit for insider trading. They were alleging the fact that we knew about the Attorney General's lawsuit against the company, and we were dumping our stock before the lawsuit would happen. And then I got another letter in the mail, and it said Securities and Exchange Commission. They were now looking into insider trading. Then I got a notice from our accounting firm, a local accounting firm here that will remain nameless, that they were going to back out on our revenue recognition policy. And so all of a sudden, I was in a crap storm. Our stock went from 27 to 15 and then went to 2. I remember turning over my personal phone records, my personal bank records. I remember the SEC coming in and taking my phone and my computer and downloading it onto their servers. And I knew all along we had done nothing wrong. We knew nothing about this lawsuit. I knew that our revenue recognition policy was solid. In fact, our auditors had written it before Sarbanes-Oxley. Your auditors actually could write your revenue recognition policy. Today they do not, as you know. But I knew we were on solid ground, and yet things were just swirling. We became the most shorted stock on any exchange. It was just crazy and chaotic. I remember one day I was so stressed. I went into the office early in the morning. Let's make sure I don't go over my time. I went into the office early in the morning, and I had my daily huddle with my executive team. And then I walked out of the office, got in my car, and I drove around for 7 hours that day around the valley, just trying to process what was I going to do. I had at that time about 500 employees I felt were relying on me to dig us out of this problem. I knew the truth would set us free, but I didn't see how I could get out of it. So I made a decision that day. I said, if I can go and turn the tide of this negativity in just one way, I think I can build some positive momentum. And I thought to myself, the easiest way is if I can negotiate our way out of this lawsuit with the state of California, or state of Texas. Did I say California earlier? Did I say Texas? It was Texas. Now, I know you guys had Attorney General Sean Reyes come and speak to you, correct? He's a friend of mine. I love Sean Reyes. I've actually sponsored him out to Washington, D.C. to speak to our association at a government fly-in. I've had him down to our offices in Linden. He's a spectacular guy with very high ethics, and I just really admire Sean. But you know what AG stands for generally, right? It stands for about governor, just about governor, which means most attorneys general, they are all out for publicity. They're out to build a name for themselves because they don't want to be the attorney general of their state. They want to be the governor of their state. And I knew specifically at the time that the Attorney General of Texas had huge political aspirations. He had just announced that he would be running for governor the following year. And I thought to myself, that might be a piece of leverage. Why? A good positive settlement announcement that he could hang his hat on would be good for him. So I had, in the meantime, scoured this lawsuit, and I had determined that what I was going to do is I was going to go change our business model, and I was going to go and enact about 5 or 6 different policies and procedures in the way that we disclose things to consumers. I was going to implement it into our marketing and sales channels. I was going to prove it out, which I did, and did successfully. And then what I would do is I would go and offer up, without them knowing that I had already proven these disclosures out in our business model, I would go and offer that up as a settlement, that we would implement these 5 or 6 strategies into our business model. And so that's what we did, along with several $100,000 that we paid to the state. And we were able to settle that lawsuit. Well, what ended up happening was it created positive momentum for our business. All of a sudden, we were able to sit down with the SEC, show them the facts. We didn't know about the lawsuit with the Attorney General's office. And in fact, because we were able to settle that lawsuit, we had the Attorney General's office call the SEC and tell them that no one in the company could have known about the lawsuit before those stock sales. And so all of a sudden, the SEC backed off. And we were able to make two very, very positive public announcements that we'd settled this lawsuit, that the SEC was no longer pursuing the company. And then we did a restatement of our revenues and our earnings, and they were exactly what they always had been. And we were able to prove that our revenue recognition policy was accurate. And guess what happened? Our stock went from that $2 to $5 to $10 to $15 to $20 to $25 to $32. Again, one of the key negotiations of my professional career. So I had the opportunity to exit that business in 2008. So that was what, doing the math, about 7 years ago. I thought I wanted to be retired. I was in my mid 30s, into late 30s. So I think I am older than most of you. Thank you, Brad, for saying I'm close to their age. I'm 45. I don't see anyone near 45 in this room. But I was in my mid to late 30s, and I thought to myself, I want to be done. I want to be retired. That sounded cool. So I did. I moved on. I sold my stock. And I was sitting in my house, and my wife kept putting these documents on my desk. And it's what you call a honey-do list. And so day in and day out, I was running errands. And I got really tired of it. And so I went and rented some office space down the road from my house. And so I could say I was going to open a consulting practice and do some business. Really what I did is I put a big TV up on the wall. I had Fox News on. I had my computer there, and all I did was watch the market all day. I'd text and call friends and see if they could go to lunch, but they were all busy working. So I decided, you know what? This is actually a real drag. I don't necessarily want my kids to see me doing nothing for the next 15 to 20 years. And so one thing led to another. I networked and started a business in 2000 and end of 2009, early 2010, called Nudge. I partnered with a gentleman named Ryan Pullman. We built this business from scratch. We were really the first companies. We did a couple of acquisitions, and we started Nudge. And Nudge now does about $400 million in revenues a year. We have over 700 employees. Our main office is in Linden, Utah. We have an 85,000 square foot facility down there. And we just work with some of the best people in the state. We're really lucky to live in Utah. I hope you know that. Some of the best and brightest people in this country live in Utah. I have business partners. I've had board members from New York City. I had George Soros's right-hand man, a multi-billionaire named Gary Gladstein on my board. I've had board members from LA, all over the world. They'll all tell you that the employee base in Utah is the best employee base in the country. They'll all tell you that. We're so blessed to live in this great state of Utah. Let me give you one last negotiation that I made recently that shaped things, and I think I have, Brad, do I have 5 minutes, I think? When we built Nudge about 4 years ago,
Brandon,
we built
it
through an acquisition. Yeah. You have 5 minutes?
Why don't we plan on shutting down at 9:20?
Okay. we did several acquisitions to grow the business, strategic acquisitions, and one of them we actually brought on an equity partner, albeit a small equity position in the business. It was an equity position nonetheless. And this gentleman was running, he was an operations officer for one of our nudge companies. And we got down the path with this guy a year or so, and we realized that he was not a very good fit. He had some substance abuse issues. He had some moral and ethical issues that we didn't feel comfortable with. And so we wanted him to leave. And this was going to be a pretty difficult conversation. And so we brought him into a conference room, my partner and I, and we sat him down. And the first sentence that I said was, "Hey Jim, we're going to ask you to leave today. And what we're here to do is we're here to negotiate your exit. And what we want out of this is we just want a win-win. We want you to benefit from your hard work, from what you've done, but we just need to move on." What do you think his reaction was? He was mad. He was mad. And emotions got going. He started yelling. He started using some choice words. Now, I'm a pretty competitive guy. In fact, if you talk to my employees, they'd tell you I'm a pretty intense competitive guy. I can't even play board games with my kids because I have a hard time. I got to win. So it would have been real easy for me to jump right back all over that guy. But I had a plan going in. I calculated the fact, I knew this guy. I knew he was going to try to establish power and leverage through emotion. I knew he was going to do that. And so I just calmly smiled and said, "Hey, Jim, we can make this easy or we can make it hard. But I just want you to know I want what's best for you and for your family. I just want to work it out." All of a sudden, the emotions kind of started to calm down, right? We got him to settle down. He knew we didn't want to injure him. We just needed to make a move strategically for our business. That was in our best interest. And so we spent the next couple of hours negotiating his exit. And of course, he wanted this many dollars, and we wanted this many dollars. And as most negotiations go, you're going to have to find the win-win, right? Otherwise, that tends to lead to legal battles. And sometimes you just got to go that route. I've been in that boat before where you just got to bring the attorneys in and you go to battle for a while until people find that happy medium. But we were able to, over a couple of hours, find a middle ground and resolve that issue with him and exit him out of the business. Well, what did that mean for our business? That division at the time that he was running for our business was doing about $6 million in revenue and making no money. And over the last 3 to 4 years, we built that division. Last year, it did $150 million in revenues. And it earned a significant percentage in earnings. And so it was a huge decision on our part. We could have done the easier thing, actually, in a lot of these cases, is not to negotiate. It's to let things just kind of evolve. And I've seen this happen over and over in my career where managers, they hope that things are going to change because it's so uncomfortable to hit these things head on and to negotiate. But I'm going to promise you, in almost every instance, it's better to hit it head on, to negotiate, to find a solution, and to move forward. Whether it's with an underperforming employee, whether it's with an underperforming vendor, whether it's in an underperforming partnership. Don't think it's just going to change for change's sake. It's not going to. Get in, negotiate, and make the change happen. So I only have a few minutes, and I want to show you a video that you're going to wonder, what does this have to do with negotiation? And I'm going to tell you how it has to do with negotiation, but I want you to watch this video. And before you push play, everyone knows who Steph Curry is, correct? Steph Curry was an undersized high school basketball player. His dad played in the NBA. Going into his senior year in high school, he was under 6 foot tall, weighed about 150 pounds. By his senior year, he'd grown, I think, to about 6'1" or 6'2". By the time he got to college, it was 6'3". He didn't get any D1 scholarship offers from any significant schools, but he did get offered a scholarship to Davidson, which is in Indiana. And if you followed Steph Curry's career in Indiana, he became one of the most exciting college players to watch. But was still really undervalued in the NBA draft, but was drafted to the Golden State Warriors. Last year was the MVP of the league and took his team to a world championship. One of the most dynamic, fun, exciting players in the NBA to watch. And I think we can learn a lot about business and about life from him, and I'll show you how you can learn something about negotiations. Okay, let's play this video real quick. I think it's only 3 minutes. You're gonna have to crank up the volume so they can hear it. Oh, I'm gonna click play?
Several years ago, I had the great honor of working the first ever Kobe Bryant Nike Skills Academy. Nike invited the top 20 high school shooting guards and the top 10 college shooting guards in the country to this camp with Kobe. And it's kind of funny now that I look back on it, how many of those players are now household names in the NBA. However, at that time, the least recognized player there was Stephen Curry. But I knew immediately that he was the most impressive, and that thinking long term, he was going to be a future NBA superstar. And here's how I knew that. It was all because of his work habits. Now, those skills academies, we would have 2 workouts a day for 3 straight days. 30 minutes before every single workout, most players were still in their flip-flops and had on their headphones, and Stephen Curry had already started doing some form shooting. He had already started taking game shots, game spots, and game speed. By the time the workout officially started, he had probably already made 100, 150 shots and was in a full sweat. When the workout actually started, he was meticulous with everything that he did. He made sure that he had perfect footwork. He made sure that he had perfect shooting form. If he did anything and it wasn't perfect, he did it over again. And he didn't need a coach to tell him, he just did it. And then probably the most impressive thing that he did was as soon as every workout was over, he would not leave the court until he swished 5 free throws in a row. Do you know how hard that is? But that's the level of excellence that he holds himself to. And the moral of that story is that success is not an accident. Success is actually a choice. And Stephen Curry is one of the best shooters on the planet today because he has made the choice to create great habits. And my question to you is, are the habits that you have today on par with the dreams that you have for tomorrow? That's something that you need to ask yourself every single day. Because whatever you do on a regular basis today will determine where you will be tomorrow.
Curry got the 3 off. Tie game! Steph Curry knocks it down. He is in a zone right now all by himself. Curry defended now. Curry hitting another 3.
But what this kid has done is just incredible. It's some of the best shooting I've ever seen.
And the other thing was,
Did you see him walk away before the ball went in the
You get
basket?
a text from somebody, Steph is heating up. Like, there's only a couple players in the league that gets you to stop everything you're doing to watch whatever he's doing, and I think he reached that level last year.
Like, the one thing I was saying, can he continue to shoot like this? He's never not shot like this. He's always shot. You know, the only thing he's on, this is a stage now that's bigger and better. But in college at Davidson, he was a shooter like this. In high school, he was a shooter like this. And you're watching it now.
Curry from deep. There's the record. He stands alone as the best three-point shooter in a single season in NBA history.
And the moral of that story is that success is not an accident. Success is actually a choice. And Stephen Curry is one of the best shooters on the planet today because he has made the choice to create great habits. And my question to you is, are the habits that you have today on par with the dreams that you have for tomorrow?
Curry with the steal. Steph Curry fires away. Got it! Are you kidding me? Curry electrifying this crowd.
Okay. I don't think I have to do anything, right? Okay, so what's the moral of that video? What is it? Success is not an accident. Negotiations are not an accident. Your success in business won't be an accident. It's all about what you're willing to do to create the success. The 7 keys to good negotiation?
Yes.
Yeah. Get the facts. Have a plan. Establish power or leverage. Listen. Control the emotions. Problem solve and find a win. Hopefully you saw in the 4 stories I told, you could see how we were implementing, or I was implementing those strategies.
Brandon, which of those 7 would be your top 2 or 3?
Listen. Establish power. Find the win.